Okay, this is a video for section 8.3. These are algebraic equations just like you would have experienced in grade 8. In grade 8, you called this chapter distributive property because you were multiplying a binomial by a term. So in this case, we're multiplying the binomial x minus 0.6. We're multiplying it by 2 to start. So the only difference between the questions you've been doing before, in grade 8, you would have done a question like this. Okay, there's a grade 8 version. And this is a variation of a grade 8 question that does not involve a whole lot of complexity because the procedure for solving it is going to be identical. You have one option. Option 1 is to expand. So when you expand this, you're going to get 2x minus 1.2. Because not only do you have 2x's, but you have two negative 0.6's, which is negative 1.2 equals 4.2. Then you're going to add, then you're simply going to isolate using your algebra sense. You get 2x equals 5.4. And then you're going to divide both sides by 2. And x will equal 2.7. Okay? That's as easy as it gets. It's just one small little step more. Instead of using nice, wonderful whole numbers here that you would have gotten 2x plus 6 equals 6, we're getting decimal values instead, which is not a complex difference between the two. It's just a little bit of calculator work or mental math if you're good at multiplying and dividing with decimals. However, there is a second method you could use, and you learned it in grade 8, and it still applies to grade 9 work. In grade 8, I'll do it with this one here first. In grade 8, you learned that instead of expanding, I can divide both sides by 2. So instead of having two groups of x plus 3, I can have one group of x plus 3. That equals 3. And we kind of drew it like this. So you have a group of x plus 3. You had another group of x plus 3. And if two groups of x plus 3 equals 6, then each group of x plus 3 must have equaled 3. Okay? That's what you learned in grade 8. So that same concept in grade 9 means you can take both sides and divide both sides by 2. And instead of having two groups of x minus 0.6, you have one group of x minus 0.6 equaling 2.1. And once you get it there, you can add 6/10 to both sides. And x will equal still the same answer we got in the first one, 2.7. Okay? So that's your first show you know. Make sure that you understand that with distributive property, you don't have to always expand it. You can divide by the multiplier on both sides and still be able to solve it without expansion. In the second show you know, we have this one. We use x instead of c. We use x. X plus 2 divided by 3 equals negative 2.5. Okay? So here's your second show you know. We'll call this one show you know B. Okay? So this one doesn't involve distributive property, but this time the numerator of our fraction is not just a nice x, it's an x plus 2, which makes it look a little bit more complicated, but not really. So the first thing I'm going to do if I'm solving this is I don't want mixed fractions in there. So that negative 2.5 is going to become negative 5 over 2, which is the same thing. So change your mixed fractions to improper. And then I'm going to say, okay, hang on. I want to get rid of this part here. So I know that if it was x over 3, I would multiply both sides by 3, and I'd be left with x. Okay? But in this one, I'm going to go backwards because I don't want to have that thing there still. In this one, I'm still going to multiply both sides by 3. But when I get rid of it, I'm not left with x. I'm going to be left with x plus 2. And when I multiply this by 3, I'm going to get negative 15 over 2. Okay? Or if you want to think of it as a, because I know I'm going to be subtracting a whole number here in a second, that is negative 7.5. And I'm going to show you why that's, in this particular question, because I'm looking ahead, and I realize I'm going to be subtracting 2 from both sides to get rid of that plus 2, I'm going to actually not keep it as an improper fraction, which is rare, because normally that's how you always should. Thank you, Destiny. And I'm going to put this sucker right up here as a mixed fraction. And now when I subtract 2 from both sides, it makes sense why I chose that. Negative 7.5, take away 2 more, is now negative 9.5, and that's your answer. X equals negative 9.5, or if you want to, you could reconstitute that to be a decimal, which would be negative 9.5. Okay? Now, let's pretend you didn't know that. Let's pretend you didn't know that, and you kept it as, where's my other marker? So let's pretend I didn't change it to improper. So I would have had negative 15 over 2. Now, that's okay if you kept it that way, because watch what happens. When I subtract 2 from both sides, I'm going to get x equals negative 15, take away 2, or take away 2 over 1. Okay, when I subtract 2 from both sides, here I'd have to find a common denominator. In this case, it would be 4 over 2, which is equal to 2. Negative 14, take away positive 4 would be keep flip change. I'd still end up with negative 19 over 2, which is still negative 9.5, which is still the answer I got before. So either way, you can get the right answer. Okay, second show you know.